Hello, everyone. Welcome to Thursday Tea Times. This is Anne Marie, aka Bald Girl Will Travel. And today we are going to be talking about anti-racism, colorism, colonialism, uh, as you're traveling black in Africa and the Caribbean. I really been thinking about this a lot as I will be doing a lot. I'm doing a lot of travel to Africa this year. I did several countries on the continent earlier this year, and I'm headed to Egypt and then back to Ghana later in the year. And I've also been to the Caribbean. I went to Trinidad and Tobago, and I'm planning several trips in the Caribbean next year. So I've been thinking a lot about this. I shared a video on my social media where a black woman, a Kenyan woman, was talking about an experience she had traveling to the island of Mauritius, which is an island in Africa, um, and a really negative experience she had at the airport. And it really got me to thinking about um, anti-blackness and the fact that it permeates the entire world, including the African continent and the Caribbean, due to colonialism, and that it's something that a lot of us don't talk about. And but are likely to experience in some way, shape, or form when we are traveling, even to majority black countries. Definitely to countries that are majority white in the West. Europe, the United States is notoriously racist, as in many, many parts of East and Western Europe. I talked about my experiences with anti-black racism in Italy, in Rome specifically. And, TikTok, Instagram, the internet is scattered, YouTube is scattered with stories from black people about experiences they've had on travel. But I wanted to talk a little bit about my experiences dealing with anti-black racism and colorism specifically in the Caribbean and Africa. And it's something I think that we should be prepared for. I think a lot of us are unprepared for it and don't really know what to make of it. I would also say that as an American, I'm pretty sure that the experiences that I've had are much less than experiences that individuals who live on the continent of Africa or in other parts of the Caribbean might experience visiting places in the Caribbean, because our passports and our American accents often protect us from things that our fellow, members of the Caribbean, African diaspora are not protected from. But I'll talk a little bit of some experiences that I've had traveling. Not a lot, but have had them. I'm having rosé today, my favorite rosé. I did restock, so we're good to go today. I would preface this by saying I lived in Trinidad and Tobago from the time I was 9 years old until I was 14. And one of the things I do remember as a young girl was being very aware of the fact that the standard of beauty in Trinidad was very European. That, a lot of the women who were presented on television and that I saw on TV and so on were, lighter skinned, mixed. Trinidad has a lot of mixed people who are mixed with Indian and black. There are some people who are mixed with Lebanese and black, Lebanese and Indian mixture, Chinese and black, Chinese, black, Lebanese, and so on. And that those people were definitely, I would see more of those people on TV. And it was very clear that the standard of beauty skewered toward those people. Trinidad and Tobago is known for having really beautiful women. The first Black Miss Universe ever in the world was from Trinidad and Tobago. They've had at least two Miss Universes and a couple Miss Worlds. They're very beautiful women, but probably only one of them that I can think of was a darker skinned black woman. All the rest of them were either very mixed looking or a type of person that you really couldn't determine what their race was. And that seems to be the standard of beauty, not just in Trinidad and Tobago, or specifically in Trinidad, but it's also something that you will find in Jamaica. You'll find in other parts of the Caribbean. When you look at the people, even in beauty pageants that represent those countries, they really don't look a lot like the people that you actually see when you visit the island. So there is a lot of colorism. And all of those things, in my opinion, stem from the desire for the white gaze, the desire for white proximity, colonialism, which to me is pretty much the same as slavery. I've talked about this before, that, it's one thing to have your ancestors or your family or your relatives stolen and sent away somewhere, and it's another thing to have someone invade your country and take it over, and you have to stay there and watch them take it over and be their servants for hundreds of years. So in many ways, colonialism is really, I can't even say it's the cousin of slavery. It was just a different form of slavery. And I do find that in my travel and interactions with black people on the African continent, and especially countries that were colonized by Britain, like Kenya, there's a type of subservience, for lack of a better word, that I've observed. Not with everyone, I can't speak for everyone, but with a lot of people that I've interacted with in, those Kenya particularly. I saw a bit of it in Tanzania, but not as much as what I observed in Kenya. There's a tendency to be very subservient. Some of it I also observed in Senegal, but none of it was necessarily directed at me. It was just things that I observed. The only time I would say that I've really had interactions that really showed me that there was a differential in treatment was when I visited the island of St. Lucia, which I've already shared. I will never visit that island again. That was a place that I visited where it was really like distinct, where I was almost ignored by local people. I was traveling with one of my good friends who's white, and it was so obvious that she even noticed it and was like, "What what is going on? Why are people only greeting me? Why are they only talking to me? Why are they ignoring you? Why are they being so rude?" And so on. And it was definitely an environment where we were staying at a really nice hotel. I can't remember the name of it, in St. Lucia. It was like up on a mountain. We were staying in one of the villas, and she was the person who booked it. She had a timeshare, so she booked it to celebrate my birthday. And we went up there together, and we were hanging out with a friend of hers who was actually from St. Lucia, and she was also black and from St. Lucia. And from the first time we went out together, it was very obvious that all the local people that we interacted with were only interested in talking to my friend who was white, making sure that she was having a good time, interacting with her, and like completely ignoring me and her friend who was local. And I remember her friend saying to me, because she had moved back there from the United States, she said to me, "It's like 1975 here. People are really colonized, and they feel like if you're white, you're better. You probably have money. They don't think that black people are, they don't treat black people equally to the way that they treat white people, especially in tourism." And that was it was like really marked. I remember at one point leaving her in the villa and going down to the front desk to ask a question about something, and the person at the front desk like openly ignored me. And I was just standing there waiting for her. She had her back turned. She turned around, she saw me, and she turned back around. And when a white woman walked up, "Hi there, Michelle." A white woman walked up, and as soon as she turned around and saw the white lady, she turned all the way around, greeted her, and asked her how she could help her. Mind you, I'm standing right there. And the white woman looked at her, looked at me, and said, "I think this lady was waiting." And I said to the white woman, "Thank you, but never mind. She doesn't notice me. I'm invisible because I'm black." And I walked away. I was really pissed. And I had to tell my friend to go down there and deal with the front desk because I was really like over it by that time. Because it wasn't the first instance. It had been like several days of, "Hi, Denise." These kinds of encounters. Like we went to breakfast and the staff only talked to my friend, and the last night we were there, that's when she like commented about it, because the server came over, three of us sitting there at dinner. She only spoke to my friend who was white. She didn't even say hello to us. It was really like weird, like the level of like open bias that was going on. So I can't say the whole island is like that. I'm sure not everyone has had that experience, but that was my experience. And so I personally don't have a desire to go back to that island, and I'm pretty sure that I won't. Hi there, because it was just a real turn off. And I would say, when did I go to St. Lucia? It was probably somewhere between 2015 and 2018. So it wasn't a really long time ago. Um, I will say one thing I did remember in Africa, as I said, I was in Kenya especially. I will say the staff and people I met in Kenya were lovely to me. I already told you all about how good a time I had in Kenya. But I did observe how subservient, like in the way that people talk to and related to white people, there's a lot of really, y'all know what I mean. It was really interesting. But I wouldn't say that they showed any bias towards me. I would say people went out of their way to make sure that I felt comfortable, welcome at the hotel that I was staying and everywhere I went. But I did notice that, they were colonized by the British. They're very formal, extremely polite, period, no matter who they're interacting with. But there was this kind of thing in terms of how people related to white people in the country. Sorry about that. You know what it is? Because my glasses are dirty. Let me take them off till I can't see. I'm going to have to put it back on shortly. But she said that there was a glare on my glasses, so I'm taking them off. But I would say, in Kenya, I noticed that there was a type of accommodation that I noted, but I didn't feel like it had any impact on how I was treated. I do remember when I was in Tanzania, in Zanzibar, at the resort where I was staying, there was a lot of security at the resort. And I guess it's to make sure that people, because the resort was so close to the beach, there were security on the grounds to make sure, I guess, that people that weren't guests didn't enter like the pool area and stuff like that. So when I checked in, they gave me a bracelet. And they asked me to wear it for the whole time I was there so that I could go to the beach and come back on the property without any issue. So the first night I was staying at a hotel, and this is not the hotel where my group meetup will be, by the way. But I was staying at a hotel, all inclusive. And from the time I checked in that day, so I'd literally just gotten there and I had the bracelet on and I was going to see the beach, which was stunning. And the security guy came up to me and he asked me whether I was staying at the hotel. Now I'm walking from the hotel grounds and I'm going towards the beach area. So I'm not coming from the beach, I'm on the hotel grounds. And he asked me whether I was staying at the hotel. And I told him I was, and I pointed to my bracelet. And he said, okay. And I went to, I think I was going to the dining room or somewhere near towards the beach. And then I want to say, or I was going to the pool, one of those things. They had a really nice pool at that hotel. So I'm coming from the pool, I think, and I'm going to the area where the dining is. And the same security guard walks up to me again. Now, y'all, I'm black and I'm bald-headed and I'm relatively attractive. So I don't think people forget me when they see me. The same guy walks up to me again and asks me again whether I'm staying at the hotel. And this time, I think I was a more stern in how I responded to him. And I asked him, if I were white, would you be asking me this 2 times in the same evening? And he did apologize, and he didn't ask me again for the entire time he saw me staying there. But that's kind of an example of what I mean. It was like, why? And some may say he was being flirty and he was being friendly. I don't know. But I know he asked me more than once whether I was staying at the hotel and asked to see my bracelet, and I found that problematic. I didn't mind the first time, but the second time I was annoyed. And so it was kind of that kind of thing. And I was the only black person that was staying at the hotel at the time I was there. I think there was one other couple, mixed couple. I think the woman might have been Asian, Southeast Asian, but I was the only black person at the hotel who was not working there. So I know, I couldn't be that hard to see, especially the first time he asked me and I showed him the bracelet. So it was kind of like that. And I have had conversations with people who are African who have told me about interactions they've had, not in Tanzania, but in other countries in Africa, particularly Mauritius and the Seychelles. Besides the video that I shared with the Kenyan woman talking about how she was treated going to Mauritius, I've also had people talk about their experiences in the Seychelles, like similar experiences going through the airport. None of these people were American. And I definitely, and I've seen a video where a woman talked about how she was treated in Bali and she was Jamaican and how they didn't even let her into the country. Um, they literally put her in a room for more than several hours and then put her on a plane and told her that she couldn't, and she had a valid passport. She was coming from Australia, never given an explanation. So there's anti-blackness everywhere in the world, right? But I always find it markedly problematic when I experience it in countries or observe it in countries that are majority black, because you would think that you go to majority black country, you're not going to experience that. But that's not necessarily true, because colonialism, as I said, has touched every part of the world, including the places in the world that are majority um, black. I have not spent a lot of time in South America. I'm getting ready to do my first trip to South America, and I'll tell you guys more about that later. But I'm heading to Colombia for a visit, and I'll be sharing more about my trip to Colombia. But I'm really interested to see, what it's going to be like. I've heard fantastic things about Colombia, and that it's a place that black people go and really, really have a great time. So I'm really looking forward to going. But I'm interested to see what it's like. I've heard stories about Brazil and the existence of colorism there, and I've heard horrible stories about Argentina. Um, so, I'd love to hear in the comments whether any of you have encountered any of this in your travels, but it's definitely a thing. I also think that as Black Americans, when we go to Africa, we often feel, we're going to Africa, we're going home. People are going to be happy to see us. It's just like, our people. And in a sense, they are our people. But I always tell people, you're American to them, first and foremost. You may be black, but you're American. And so you're a tourist, just like any other tourist a lot of them interact with. And so I do feel like you should have that understanding, is that your ancestry is African, but you are American, and you have a culture which is envied the world over as Black Americans, and we have our own culture and our own mores and social things that are different from Africans. And so when you go to Africa, I really think you should understand you're going to be welcome there. You're going to be treated well, more likely than not, but you are a visitor. So it's good to go with that understanding, and that you may observe or have interactions that may not be exactly what you expect, or you may observe interactions, because I really do feel, as Black Americans particularly, when we travel in Africa, we probably have a different experience than what some Africans from other countries in Africa might have when they go to some of these resort places, and where some of the people are mixed with other, there's Middle Eastern, Arab mixed with Black in some of these places, and some people think that they're not African, like really African, they're something else. I heard there's some of that in Mauritius and Seychelles that may impact the way people treat each other and visitors. India. He ignored all my questions and only answered hers to the point where my white friend had to say I don't have any more questions, but she does. I believe that, and I've heard that about India. And I don't know, I've never been to India, and as I've told you guys before, India is not high up on my list of places that I feel a burning desire to go to. Hi there, Golden Girl. My eyes are not working really well today. I've been on my computer all day, which is why I have to wear my glasses, because I can't see a thing by this time of the day, when I've been on my computer with clients all day. But I definitely think it's a thing, and it's a thing you need to be aware of. You need to do your homework, because unfortunately, anti-black and anti-brown shows up all over the world, even in places that you wouldn't expect it to. And I think the more prepared you are, the less jarring it's going to be, but it's still going to be a not positive experience. I was really, really, really disappointed with my experience in St. Lucia, because I was really excited to go there, and I wasn't expecting to have that kind of experience. I mean, I've experienced mild things in countries, and I've been to multiple Caribbean islands, and I do realize that a lot of times people interact, they see white people, they think white people have a lot of money, so they target them, they court them, they're extra friendly towards them, because they think that if they're friendly to them. Hi there, Phyllis. that they will spend their money. And so that's a capitalism, economics type thing. But I've been to India and didn't experience a difference. So different people have different experiences, but I always feel like even if you don't have that experience, just as long as you understand that it is an experience that some people have and it is a real experience, and so don't negate it just because it didn't happen to you. Consider yourself lucky that it didn't happen to you. Because again, I feel that colorism also plays a role in this. So what you look like as a black person does impact the way you get treated in certain parts of the world. So even though you're black, if you have lighter skin, you have light eyes, you have wavy hair, you look mixed, even if you're not, you might have a very different experience than someone that looks like me, or someone who's even markedly darker than me will have a different experience. So I think those are other things that you have to be aware of, because even within the black group of black people, there are ranges of privilege, right? And unfortunately, a lot of people in the world, including in African and Caribbean countries, put a lot of value on skin color. I know that's the case in Trinidad and Tobago. It just is, And it's the case in other Caribbean countries, and it's the case in the United States, and it's the case in Africa, on the African continent as well. So there are things that I've noticed in Africa, around those things. And some of it was disturbing, seeing really young African women up underneath these really, really old white men, because economics, right? But that's a conversation for another day. But all of these things, at the root of them is, white supremacy and colonialism. But what bothers me is when I see people treat people badly as a result of, I didn't see that comment, so I'm looking for it. When people treat people badly because of their color, or because they're black, especially when black people do it. It's really, troubling. I'm sorry, I have to put my glasses on. Phyllis, very true. Your share of blacknesses can matter. And as a dark woman, yes, it's true. I haven't been to Grenada. It's on my list of places, but I haven't been there yet. But I do know that it's a thing. And so that's why I'm talking about it, because I do feel that as you prepare for trips, you might experience some of that. And to me, none of these things are reasons not to travel, right? Because like I said, all these things exist in the United States as well, right? And anywhere where there's been slavery and colonialism, these things exist. So you just have to be prepared for them. And for me, it's always more jarring observing them. I've observed a lot more things than I've personally had to experience. I've observed African people being disrespected and mistreated in Italy, for example. While I didn't experience it in a particular town, I have seen it happen more than I've actually experienced it. And it bothers me just as much to see it as it does or did when actually someone was rude and disrespectful to me, right? Which was Rome. But I observed a lot of it throughout the country, that people can be really mean and nasty towards people who are African, versus you're American. The minute they either can tell you're American by the way you look and dress, and then you start talking and they're super nice and friendly and welcoming to you, but then you observe them being really disrespectful or rude to the African guy that works in the restaurant. And that's just a bigger turnoff. To me anyway, it is. Or, the guy is really helping you with your bags to get on the train, but then he's not being nice to the African lady who's getting on the train, who's dressed, as an African woman, and you can tell she's African immigrant. Those kinds of things. I've observed them, not just in Italy, but also in other parts of Europe. It's particularly hurtful when black people in the country treat you as an African American. Well, that's what I was saying is, it's important for us to remember that even though we are black when we visit Africa, you are not African to them. You're American to them. And that's for better or for worse. That's what they think of you. And so, the economics of it does play a role. And, a lot of these countries are very poor. You might go there and stay at a really nice hotel and have a great tourist experience with pools and food and everything. But people that live in the country don't live like that. There's not really a middle class in a lot of these countries. They're wealthy people and they're poor people. And so when they interact with you, they don't see you as like them, right? And so While they might call you sister at every turn, especially when they're trying to get you to buy something, you do have to remember you are a visitor, you're a tourist. You're a tourist that looks more like them than other tourists, but you're still a tourist. And so, if you're going there to feel like you're at home, I think you're going to be disappointed. I go into Africa, and just like when I go to any other country, and while I have a particular special feeling that it gives me, I always do remember that I'm visiting, that I'm not African. I may be African by descent and culture, but I wasn't born on the continent. I wasn't born in any of those countries. I'm American, right? And so they're going to think of you in that way. And so, when they deal with you, they think of you as an American and a tourist in a lot of the interactions that you have. And so sometimes people are really disappointed because they feel, they thought that they were going to go and they're going to get this warm welcome, and and you do get a warm welcome in a certain way, but you're a visitor, right? But I do think that, when it comes to how you get treated, Portugal, 5 other women. Yep, I believe it. When I flew into Milan airport, I was coming from JFK. I flew into Milan. I was on my way to Florence. And, I got my sunglasses on, my baseball hat, minding my business, walking out of the airport with my carry-on because, I don't check bags. And I see this immigration officer right by the part where you exit after you get your bags and you're going into, out the airport to get your taxi. And all he's doing is every single immigrant person he saw, whether they were, Southeast Asian or black, he was pulling them off, pointing them out and telling them to step aside so he could search their luggage, right? And I see him out of the corner of my eye doing it, but I just was walking by him, and he sees me and points at me and tells me to come over. And I come over and I'm like, what is it? What do you want? And as soon as I said that, he asked me, what airport did you fly in from? And I said JFK, and he said, you're fine. What is that about? Right? So if I came from Kenya or Sri Lanka, you need to go dig up all up in my suitcase. But since I came from JFK and I have an American accent, I'm fine. That's what I mean. So there are levels to this stuff, and there are different things that play into it. But there's definitely anti-black racism everywhere that you go, even, as I said, in the Caribbean and Africa. It may not be as extreme, I think, but I mean, some of the stories that I've heard from Mauritius and Seychelles sounded kind of extreme to me, and kind of made me, I still want to visit, but it made me kind of pause at the thought of visiting when I, heard people talking about how they got treated in the airport, right? And how disrespected they were in the airport by people that look like them, right? Coming from other African country on the same continent. Mauritius is an island off the coast, I think, of Seychelles is off the coast of Tanzania, and I can't remember where Mauritius is, but it's in Africa, and it's in the Indian Ocean. It's supposed to be very pretty. So it was, I was really surprised when I saw that initially, and then I started going down a video rabbit hole and researching, and found that it's not something that happens to everyone, but it is something that has happened to people, particularly African people, traveling to Mauritius. I don't know what that is about, but it's a thing. And Portugal, Portugal has a long history. Portugal is one of the founders of the transatlantic slave trade. And what was interesting to me about Portugal is when I went to visit Portugal last year, and I enjoyed Portugal, I might add, was treated very well, but didn't like the food. I went on this tour, and the guy kept talking about their great history of exploration, but he said nothing about slavery, and he did nothing about African, the colonization by Portugal or anything. And it was only when I went on this Africa Lisbon tour, which is, I highly recommend, if you ever go to Portugal and you go to Lisbon, do that tour. You can find him on Instagram. It's excellent. He talked about the history of Portugal and the harm that they had done through slavery and colonization all over Africa and South America, Brazil, just evil stuff between that, the Portuguese and the Catholic Church. Oh my goodness, it's just horrible. But if I hadn't gone on that tour and I just, did the tour with the guy, they were just explorers, is all he was telling me. But he didn't talk anything about what they did while they was exploring. So, everybody has their version of history that they want to talk about. And I found it very interesting that, the Portuguese almost act as if none of these things ever happened. Like if they don't talk about it, it never happened. And, that was one of the things that the gentleman who was doing the tour was talking about the way in which they don't deal with their history, even to this day. Sound familiar? Like if you don't talk about it, it never happened. So that's my little comment about Portugal. But in Portugal, I was actually treated really, really well. Like everyone that I interacted. I remember at one point I was like a little winded because, there's a lot of hills and stuff. And I walked into this store to look for something, and I was huffing and puffing, and the little old lady behind the counter ran and got me a glass of water. And I just thought that was so sweet. She didn't even ask. She just went and got me a glass of water. And I mean, she didn't speak a lot of English, but she could tell that I had been walking a lot and that I was a little winded. And she got me a glass of water and watched me drink it, like, you need to drink this water right now. So I had a really good experience in Portugal, but they have a history, as do all of much of Europe and so on. So it's just something that you have to keep in mind. But my experience in the country itself was very positive with everyone that I interacted with. In every aspect of every interaction I had in restaurant, I dined by myself a lot because I solo travel and I like dining by myself. Excellent experiences. Every restaurant I went in, really nice people. Didn't love the food. Service was excellent. People were super nice. So, but Portugal has a history of colonization, transatlantic slave trade, all of that. So it's just one of those things that I wanted to talk about the subject because I think that as Black people, there's a lot of videos about, Italy and what happened to me when I went to, Bulgaria and, Eastern Europe. That's a whole other conversation. Even though I've had good experiences in most of the places I've been in Eastern Europe. Lots of staring, but friendly people. But I've read stories about Bulgaria and they did not warm my cockles. So, I'm not sure that Bulgaria is on the top of places that I want to go to in Eastern Europe, but great experiences in Serbia when I went there. Good experiences, a lot of staring in Ukraine, but people were relatively nice, even though Ukraine has a lot of issues also. And very good experiences in Moldova when I went there. So overall, my experiences were good, but that doesn't mean anti-blackness doesn't exist, right? That means that I just didn't experience it, right? But definitely, we think a lot about when we go to majority white countries, we, hope to have a good experience, but we kind of sometimes, may be prepared that we might not always have a great experience. But it's quite possible that you may go to majority brown and Black countries and also, experience levels of anti-Black racism and definitely colorism. And so I want us, be aware of it. I don't think there's a reason not to travel because, like I say, if you live in America, in the United States of America, you should be prepared because it's a everyday, all day, all the time thing there, right? It's interwoven in every aspect of life in the United States. So, but you don't want to go on vacation and have to interact with it on a regular basis. But I really haven't ever really dealt with it on a regular basis. There've just been instances in which I've even observed or experienced it, but rare instances. Like I've been to over close to 40 something countries at this point, and I maybe have 2 or 3. I could tell you stories and stories. I could write a book about the things that happened to me in the United States from the time I was born, right, up until I left. So that's the difference. But I do think you should just be aware that you might encounter things. And what happens to you or how you're treated is very much tied in a lot of ways to your passport. So a lot of us may avoid a lot of things, but we may observe things that seem odd to us. And in some instances, we might experience something because sometimes someone sees you and they're not sure right away They don't know you're American right away, and they start to act funny with you. And then you start talking, and they realize you're American, and then their whole demeanor changes. That has happened to me a lot on travel, right? So just be aware that this is not something that's just only going to rear its ugly head in majority white countries. From time to time, you may also experience it as you travel in Asia, countries like India, Sri Lanka, Malaysia. These are all places I've read or heard of instances of these issues. You may still encounter these stuff in countries where people are damn near like Indian, darker than you are. Yes, that's true. You may encounter it in places that you might not expect to encounter it, right? And I'm not talking about people staring and pointing, because you go to some of these places, they've never seen a black person before. I expect that most people have never seen a black ball of woman before. So when people stare at me, I really don't. I don't even notice it anymore, to be honest with you. Other people who are with me often will say to me, people, I can't believe how much people stare. I don't notice it because it's just not something I pay attention to anymore. It's just not something I care about, and I don't pay attention. But I expect that people stare at me, so I don't count things like that. It's like people, it's really, you can tell the difference between curiosity and disdain, right? So just understand that you may experience this and be prepared to deal with it. So I hope these comments and stories have been helpful. I am in the throes of putting together a trip, so I'm not going to be staying on really long tonight. So I'm getting ready to close this up. If you subscribe to my website, you know that I announced some group meetups for next year. I will be doing some group trips, small group trips to multiple places. Some places I've been before, and some places I haven't been, but they're all places that I either really want to go to or have gone to and really enjoyed and want to go back. So I am about to drop a trip to Turkey, that I'm doing a group trip, a small group trip to Turkey. So that's going to be dropped on my, I just announced it online on my email subscriber list, and a couple people have already signed up. But there's still 6 spots. There are 8 spots total, and there are about 6 spots still left. 2 people have already signed up for the trip. So if you're interested in going to Turkey in April, you might want to visit my website or sign up for and join my Facebook group, where I have a Facebook group for black women over 40 who are either solo travelers or aspire to be solo travelers. And I usually share a lot about my trips in there first before I announce it in a wider audience. But I'm going to drop the trip on Turkey in my social media tomorrow. And then I am still working on the trip to Tobago, and that's going to drop next week. I'm still trying to iron out some details around excursions, because they're very specific excursions that I want to have. So I'm still working on that. So if you're interested in that, stay tuned. It's coming, because a couple people have messaged me to ask me when Tobago is dropping, because they want to go. So I'm letting you know. I expect that Tobago is going to sell out. It's going to only be 8 people. My trips are going to be pretty small, because you're literally traveling and hanging out with me, and I can only manage a small group of people traveling and hanging out with me. So it's not going to be no massive group trips that I will be doing. It's just going to be really small group trips, because that way, we're all having experiences together, right? Curated experiences together. So if you're interested, I am doing a trip to Zanzibar, as you know. That one is already live. I'm doing a trip to Jamaica, which is filling up, but still spaces available for that for Valentine's Day, Negril, Jamaica, in February. And then Turkey will be in April, and Tobago will be in May. And I'm working on some trips to Italy. My 2 favorite places in Italy, Tuscany and Sicily, but those won't drop for a bit longer. Those are going to be probably in September of 2024, and I'm still working on that with suppliers and so on. But if you're interested in those, you can join my Facebook group, or just and subscribe to my website, where I usually announce them a couple of days earlier before I announce them on social media. So I hope this conversation was helpful. I hope it will give you something to think about as you travel. Again, I don't want anything that I said in this conversation to be used as a deterrent not to travel. I just think it's something to be aware of as you travel, that, racism, anti-blackness, colorism, is a part of every, just about, it's international, it's global. And so the effects of colonialism and slavery are to be felt in every country in the world to some degree, including the African continent and the Caribbean. So as you travel, just keep that in mind, but don't let it make you not go somewhere. Don't use that as an excuse. Book the trip, go. Life is short, you guys. The time to do the things you want to do is now. The time to make the plans to go on the trip is not next year. Go now. Like literally, I decided a couple days ago with my best friend that we're going to Cartagena. I said, I want to go. She said, I want to go too. We're going. Because I don't believe in putting things off that you really want to do. I've been thinking about going for a while, and I was like, why do I have to wait till spring to go? Let me see if I could find a decent flight. I found one. We're going. So I can't, overemphasize the importance of doing the things that you want to do and not letting any of these things keep you from doing it. Racism is a reality of all our lives as Black people. And yet we have found a way to thrive in this world despite it all, and to be lights and to make contributions that no other group of people have made to culture and society, not just in the United States, but in the world. So we need to go wherever we want to go and let what we look like and how we move, let that be their problem. Don't let it be your problem, but have the awareness as you travel that these things exist. So I hope this is helpful. I hope you guys have a good evening. I hope you're planning a trip to go somewhere, if not with me, then on your own or with your friends or something. Peak summer season is upon us. I can't believe it is already Memorial Day in the US, which means summer is officially started. I really can't believe. I don't know where all the months have gone. It just feels like the new year just started and it's already it's June. But summertime is here. I hope you all are going somewhere fun. Have plans, and if you haven't already made plans for summer, don't do it, y'all. Don't do it to yourself, because those airline tickets, my God. Especially Europe. Don't go nowhere near Europe if you haven't already booked a ticket. Wait until September and October and November if you want to go to Europe. But the Caribbean, you can find great deals to go to the Caribbean right now, to Mexico, South America. You can find deals, really good deals actually, because it's off season for a lot of those places. So there's still places to go this summer if you haven't booked anything, but take Europe off the agenda if you haven't already booked Europe, because the airline tickets and the hotels are out. They're just off the chain. I'm going to Greece in September as an aside. And I just started making arrangements for where I'm going to stay. I'm so glad I picked September after Labor Day to go to Greece, because the prices that I have found, I just found the most adorable Airbnb in one of those buildings that people go and take those pictures in front of with the sea view and all of that. I got one of them places. And for what I'm paying for it, I would never pay what I'm paying for it in the summer. So I'm telling you guys, if you're planning to visit Europe and you haven't already booked your trip, try to go in the fall. Just don't go to summer, because you're going to pay ridiculous prices. Go in fall, shoulder season. You'll get much better deals. The weather will be nicer. Thank me later. So that's all I have to talk about today. Thanks for watching and joining me, all you guys. 41 of you. Wow. Thanks for being here. Thanks for watching. If you have any other questions, you can drop them in the comment after this goes up on my site, and I will still be happy to answer them. But the moral of the story is, these things exist, but don't let them stop you from traveling. This is Anne Marie, and I'm going to sign off now. You guys have a good evening or a good day wherever you are. Bye.